I devoted 30 years of my life to Apex Motors single-handedly building their GPS tracking system from nothing. What started as a simple location tracker evolved into the crown jewel of the company generating millions in revenue. The morning of my retirement, I walked in expecting the pension package I had been promised for decades. Instead, my boss Jackson slid a check for $50 across his mahogany desk with a cold smile. Before I dive into what happened next, let me know where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button to support my channel. I graduated from MIT with a computer science degree in 1993, a time when the digital landscape was rapidly evolving. I had always been fascinated by emerging GPS technology, which was still in its infancy back then. My original plan was to launch my own startup, focused on location tracking applications, but life had other ideas. With student loans and a desire for stability, I needed a steady income first. That is when I spotted a job listing for Apex Motors, a mid-sized car manufacturer looking to expand their technology department. During my interview, I met Thomas Apex, the founder and CEO at the time. Unlike many executives in the automotive industry, Thomas had a genuine appreciation for innovation and technological advancement. His eyes lit up when I described the potential applications of GPS in their vehicles. "Matt, I can see you have a vision for where technology can take us," he said, offering me a position on the spot with promises of competitive benefits and a solid retirement plan. "We take care of our people here at Apex. Loyalty matters to me." I still remember seeing a young Jackson working in the sales department back then. He was ambitious but seemed harmless enough, always telling jokes in the break room and bringing donuts on Fridays. No one could have predicted he would eventually climb to the top. My first assignment at Apex was creating a basic anti-theft tracking system for their luxury models. This was cutting-edge technology for the automotive industry in the early 90s. I worked tirelessly often, staying late into the night, coding in primitive languages on systems that modern programmers would find laughably limited. The breakthrough came when I connected the tracking system to vehicle diagnostics. Suddenly, we could not only locate a car, but also monitor its performance remotely. I expanded the system to predict maintenance needs, saving customers thousands in potential repair costs by catching issues early. The user interface I designed was years ahead of what competitors offered, with intuitive controls that even the least tech-savvy customers could navigate with ease. My proprietary algorithms became intellectual property that set Apex apart in the market. The system was eventually renamed Apex Track and marketed as a premium feature that justified higher price points across their vehicle lineup. What began as a simple security feature evolved into a major revenue stream and competitive advantage. As the system grew in complexity and importance, so did my role at the company. I was promoted to lead developer and given the opportunity to build a small team of talented programmers. One of my first hires was Frank, a hardware specialist who helped implement the physical aspects of the tracking system in vehicles. "Your code is brilliant," Matt Frank once told me after a particularly challenging integration project, "but without the right hardware implementation, it would just be theory." We make a good team. We did make a good team. And over the years, I mentored younger talents like Samantha and Derek, who brought fresh perspectives to the evolving system. I took pride in watching them grow as professionals under my guidance. Everything changed when Thomas Apex announced his retirement. The company had grown significantly, attracting the attention of a larger corporate entity that eventually took over. In a move that surprised everyone, Jackson was promoted to CEO, despite his limited technical knowledge. He had always been in sales and marketing, never fully understanding the engineering that made our products special. The corporate culture shifted almost immediately. Meetings that once centered on innovation and quality now focused exclusively on profit margins and cost-cutting. My protests about maintaining technical standards were increasingly met with blank stares and dismissive nods. The first real shock came when Frank was laid off during a round of restructuring. He had been with the company almost as long as I had. "They said my position was redundant," Frank told me as he cleared out his desk. 27 years, and that is all it takes. A single meeting. I fought to save his job, but Jackson merely shrugged. "Business decisions are not personal, Matt. You understand." But I did not understand. Not really. Still, I had my retirement to look forward to. My wife Linda and I had been planning for years, mapping out trips to national parks in an RV we had already purchased. Our timing seemed perfect, with our daughter finishing college right as I would be ending my career at Apex. In my final months, I created detailed documentation for the tracking system training team members, to maintain what I had built. Samantha organized a retirement party, and despite the changes in the company, I felt a sense of accomplishment. 3 decades of work were coming to a dignified close. Or so I thought. The warning signs began appearing about 6 months before my scheduled retirement date. New investors had pushed for even more aggressive cost-cutting measures, and a team of young MBA consultants began analyzing what they called unnecessary expenses throughout the company. Martha, the compassionate HR director, who had been with Apex almost as long as I had, was suddenly replaced by Brian, who happened to be an old college friend of Jackson. When I asked about Martha, the answer was vague. Martha has decided to pursue other opportunities was all anyone would say. Not long after, Samantha approached me with an apologetic expression. "The retirement party has been postponed," she said quietly. "Apparently there are budget concerns." That seemed odd for a company posting record profits, but I brushed it off as temporary belt-tightening. Then the budget for my department was slashed, despite the tracking system generating more revenue than ever before. Projects were canceled, and innovation ground to a halt. One afternoon, while walking past the conference room, I overheard Jackson speaking with investors about legacy employee liabilities. He became increasingly unavailable for our scheduled meetings, always sending a representative in his place. Something was definitely off. Weeks before my retirement date, I was instructed to train a new programmer, named John, who I later discovered was being paid a fraction of my salary. During one training session, I stumbled upon plans to outsource system maintenance to an overseas team once I departed. Just focusing on cost efficiency, John explained awkwardly when I questioned him about it. Around this time, several long-time employees suddenly took early retirement. The rumor mill suggested they had been given ultimatums rather than choices. Then came requests to sign new confidentiality agreements without time for proper legal review. When I visited HR to finalize my pension paperwork, Brian was evasive. "We are still working through some updates to the retirement packages," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. Nothing to worry about. But there was plenty to worry about. Samantha pulled me aside in the break room one day, her voice low. "Matt, there are rumors about pension restructuring. Jackson has been in meetings with legal all week. I thought you should know." That evening I created a private backup of the critical system architecture, just in case. I told myself it was standard practice for security, but deep down, a sense of unease was growing. The day before retirement, Derek was abruptly reassigned to a different department. "They said my skills were needed elsewhere," he told me, confusion evident in his expression. "Seems strange right before you leave." Strange indeed. That final day before retirement, I completed my last code check-ins and system documentation. The team organized a small lunch, though many faces were missing due to recent departures. My meeting with Brian from HR was uncomfortable at best. He kept checking his phone and avoiding specifics about the retirement package. "Everything will be clarified tomorrow," he assured me repeatedly. As I cleaned out my desk that evening, reflecting on 3 decades of work, security approached to inform me that I would need to surrender my access badge immediately after my meeting with Jackson the next morning. Taking one last look at the system monitoring screen, I saw thousands of active vehicles across the country, all running on code I had written. A sense of pride mingled with growing apprehension. I woke up on my retirement day with mixed emotions. Excitement about a new chapter battled with sadness, about leaving the work that had defined much of my adult life. Linda had planned a special dinner for that evening to celebrate. 30 years at one company deserves a proper send-off, she said, kissing me before I headed out the door. Not many people can claim that kind of loyalty these days. I arrived early to the office for final goodbyes. A small gathering of remaining developers had organized coffee and donuts in the break room. Their card was filled with inside jokes and heartfelt messages. "The system will never be the same without you," Samantha had written. "Who will understand the code when it inevitably breaks?" Just as we were sharing stories, my phone pinged with an email from Jackson requesting a private meeting at 9 o'clock sharp. Something about his terse message sent a chill through me. Walking through the hallways toward his office, I noticed strange looks from management team members passing by. Then a security guard appeared, explaining he would accompany me to the meeting. This was definitely not standard procedure for a retirement send-off. Jackson sat behind his massive mahogany desk, flanked by 2 people I recognized from the legal department. No congratulations, no reminiscing about my contributions, not even a perfunctory handshake. He immediately launched into a discussion of contractual obligations. "As you know, Matt, retirement benefits are governed by specific language in employment agreements." He began sliding a document across the desk. "Our legal team has identified certain clauses relevant to your situation." One of the lawyers pointed to an obscure paragraph buried in my original contract from 30 years ago. Something about pension requirements being tied to job classifications that could be modified at company discretion. The company reclassified your position last fiscal year, Jackson continued smoothly. As such, the full pension package you were expecting does not apply under the terms you initially agreed to. My mind raced to understand what was happening. Then Jackson pushed a check across the desk. $50. For 30 years of service. As per the contract, this is your pension, he said with finality. Now pack up and leave. I stared at the check, then at Jackson. The man sitting before me had once been a colleague who borrowed my programming books when he was trying to understand our product better. Now he was a stranger in an expensive suit. Security will escort you out, he added. Standard procedure for departing employees with access to sensitive systems. The physical sensation of shock hit me like a wave. My hands tingled and my vision narrowed momentarily. 30 years. Countless weekends worked. My daughter learning to ride a bike without me because I was debugging a critical system issue. My wife attending family functions alone because deadlines could not wait. All those sacrifices reduced to $50. In my mind, I calculated the true value I had created for the company. The tracking system alone had generated billions in revenue over its lifetime. The intellectual property I had developed was integral to their business model. And now they were exploiting a contractual loophole to avoid paying what they had promised for decades. For a brief moment, I considered immediate legal action, but the reality quickly set in. Corporate lawyers against a single employee, approaching retirement age. The case could drag on for years, draining what savings we had set aside. Instead, I maintained my composure. Looking directly at Jackson, I simply nodded, picked up the check, and stood. I understand was all I said. His expression flickered momentarily. Perhaps disappointment that I had not exploded in anger, giving him cause to have security remove me forcibly. Perhaps a fleeting moment of shame quickly suppressed. As I walked back to my desk with the security guard a few steps behind, I felt a strange sense of clarity emerging through the shock. I still held one key that Jackson in his arrogance had overlooked. Concerned whispers followed me as colleagues saw the security escort. Samantha approached, despite the guard signaling her to stay back. Matt, what happened? She asked, eyes wide with concern. Ask Jackson about the value of loyalty, I replied quietly, slipping her business card with her personal number into my pocket. Derek stood frozen by his workstation, shock evident on his face as he realized what was happening. They cannot just throw you out like this, he whispered as I passed. They can try, I replied, maintaining a dignity I did not entirely feel. I packed 30 years of personal belongings into a single cardboard box. Family photos. A coffee mug my daughter had painted in elementary school. Awards and certificates now seemingly meaningless. As I prepared to leave, I picked up the laptop issued to me just the previous week for what they had called the retirement work transition. No one stopped me as I placed it in my bag, an oversight that would prove costly. Walking through the parking lot to my car, I stared at the $50 check in my hand. My phone rang. It was Linda. How did the celebration go? She asked excitedly. Did they give you that watch you mentioned? I could not bring myself to admit the humiliation just yet. Everything went fine, I lied. I will tell you all about it tonight. Sitting in my car, I remembered recent architecture changes to the tracking system that only I fully understood. The modified API structure. The proprietary authentication protocols. The custom encryption I had implemented for data security. The system now ran in thousands of customer vehicles across the country. It monitored everything from location to engine performance. It was the backbone of their service offerings, and the backup programmers had only a surface-level understanding of how it all worked together. 3 decades of loyalty deserved appropriate compensation. If not through the promised pension, then perhaps through a renegotiation from a position of strength. At home in my office, I powered up the company laptop. The security team had already revoked my official access, but they did not know about the developer backdoor I had created years ago for emergency system maintenance. A standard practice in software development, though not one documented in the official materials. I accessed the system core, navigating through familiar code that I had written and refined over decades. There was a certain poetry to it, lines of logic flowing together in elegant solutions to complex problems. What I was about to do required precision. This was not about destruction, but about leverage. I began modifying key algorithms in the tracking system, creating a cascading error that would gradually affect all vehicle functions without causing safety issues. The changes were subtle, A tracking delay here. A diagnostic misreading there. Small glitches that would compound over time, becoming increasingly problematic, but nearly impossible to trace without intimate knowledge of the system architecture. Then I programmed a custom error message to display across all system interfaces, pension error code 50. The message would be meaningless to customers and technicians alike, but crystal clear to Jackson. Finally, I implemented an authentication lock requiring a specific password to restore full functionality. Not a simple string, but a complex algorithmic key that only I could generate. The modifications complete. I set the code to fully activate at midnight after my final paycheck would clear the bank. Then I closed the laptop, made dinner with Linda, and waited. The next morning, news reports began mentioning issues with Apex vehicles nationwide. By noon, thousands of customer complaints were flooding social media. The tracking systems were showing incorrect locations. Maintenance alerts were triggering randomly, and the premium features that justified the higher price points were becoming unreliable. Apex Motors stock dropped 30% within hours of the opening bell. Financial news reported an emergency board meeting had been called. My phone buzzed with a text from Samantha. Everything is chaos here. System crashing. No one can figure out why. Did you know this would happen? Derek called shortly after. The entire IT department is in panic mode, he said. They have pulled in every programmer, but no one understands the core architecture like you do. Jackson is losing his mind. My phone had been ringing all morning with calls from the company. I watched the count climb. 50 calls. 60 calls. At exactly the 66th call I picked up. Matt speaking, I said calmly. What the hell have you done? Jackson shouted, his composure completely shattered. I believe I have identified a pension-related error in the system, I replied evenly. His initial threats of legal action quickly shifted to desperation as I listened silently. The board is breathing down my neck. The system is failing across every vehicle in our network. That sounds like a significant problem for someone who values $50 of loyalty, I observed. What do you want? He finally asked, defeat evident in his voice. I want what was promised to me for 30 years of service, I explained. Not just for myself, but for every loyal employee who built this company. The conference call with board members that followed put everything in perspective. As Jackson stammered through explanations, I calmly outlined my contributions to the company over 3 decades, the promised pension that had been denied through contractual manipulation, and the terms for proper compensation and recognition. Mr. Harrington, the board chairman, said we were unaware of these pension irregularities. Perhaps we can discuss more appropriate arrangements. Jackson was overridden by unanimous vote. A meeting was scheduled for that afternoon. I returned to the Apex Motors building, wearing my best business suit, rather than the casual clothes I had worn on my retirement day. Security escorted me not to Jackson's office, but to the main boardroom where the power dynamic had clearly shifted. I presented documentation proving my system development work and its financial impact on the company over 30 years. The board members listened attentively, occasionally glancing at Jackson, who seemed to shrink in his chair. We would like to offer you a proper retirement package, the chairman said finally. Full pension benefits, as originally indicated in your employment discussions, plus additional compensation for intellectual property rights. Jackson was forced to apologize in front of the entire board. The humiliation in his eyes mirrored what I had felt just days before. Additionally, the chairman continued, we would like to retain you as a consultant at a premium hourly rate to ensure system stability going forward. By that evening, I had signed a proper retirement package with the full pension benefits I had earned. The system was restored to functionality with my permanent credit attribution built into the code itself. The weeks following brought mixed feelings about the tactics I had employed despite their justification. I understood that sometimes standing up against exploitation requires leverage, especially when systems designed to protect employees fail. My technical knowledge had provided that leverage, but I recognized not everyone would have similar recourse against corporate injustice. This realization sparked something new in me. Linda and I had many conversations about values and self-worth during this time. You gave them your best years, she said one evening. There is no shame in demanding fair treatment in return. With my proper pension secured, we began our delayed retirement plans. The cross-country RV trip we had dreamed about became reality, but with an unexpected addition. At each stop, I began connecting with other technology professionals nearing retirement age. Document everything I advised them. Know your worth, and be prepared to defend it. I started a small consulting business, focused specifically on helping professionals protect their interests as they approached retirement. The irony of finding this new purpose after my career officially ended was not lost on me. Reconnecting with Frank and other former colleagues revealed similar stories of corporate promises broken. Some had fought back successfully, while others had simply accepted their losses. "What you did took courage," Frank told me during a fishing trip. "We had been planning for years. Most people just walk away with whatever they are given." Samantha and Derek reached out regularly for career advice, and I mentored them about protecting their interests while still delivering excellence. "Never give less than your best," I told them. "But never let your best be taken for granted either." As Linda and I watched the sunset from our RV parked at the Grand Canyon, I reflected on the most important lesson from my experience. Loyalty must be reciprocal to have meaning. Expertise has value that should be properly compensated. And sometimes standing up for yourself means standing up for others who will come after you. I have come to appreciate the true relationships in my life versus the transactional ones that dominated my career. The friends who stood by me. The family who supported me. These connections have depth that no corporate relationship ever achieved. My legacy will not be defined solely by lines of code or systems built, but by the example I set in refusing to accept injustice. The question I leave for you is this: what is your expertise truly worth, and are you prepared to stand up for its value? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories about standing up to corporate injustice. And share this video with anyone who might need to hear that their work deserves fair compensation. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, sometimes the most important code you write is the one that determines your own worth.